The signal. Admiral Thora Vextal stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council's monitoring station, her four eyes fixed on the holographic display of Sector 3 to 17. Her scaled skin reflected the blue glow of the console as she studied the anomalous readings with growing concern. The rippling patterns of her crest betrayed her agitation, something her subordinates had learned to recognize over her 3 centuries of service. "Admiral, we've isolated the signal," announced Lieutenant Zix, his voice buzzing through his mandibles. "It's coming from Earth." Vextal's outer eyelids blinked slowly. Earth, a name that evoked discomfort throughout the Council worlds. A quarantine planet, a lesson in galactic history that many preferred to forget. "That's impossible," she replied, her voice deep and measured. "Earth has been dead for 5 centuries. The atmospheric toxicity levels after the purge made survival impossible for any carbon-based life form." Zix chittered nervously. "The signal is faint but deliberate, Admiral. It bears hallmarks of human communication protocols, but evolved, more complex." Vextal approached the central console, her 7-foot frame casting a long shadow across the monitoring chamber. "Show me." The lieutenant manipulated the controls, and a waveform appeared in the air between them. It pulsed with an irregular rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, but with mathematical precision underlying its apparent chaos. "When did this begin?" she asked. 3 cycles ago. Initially, our automated systems filtered it as background radiation, but the pattern recognition protocols flagged it yesterday when the signal strength increased by 200%. Vextal studied the waveform, something about it triggering ancient memories from her training days. Humans had been resourceful, dangerously so. The combined forces had underestimated them during the Earth War, a mistake that cost millions of lives before the Council finally authorized the purge. "Has the Council been notified?" "Yes, Admiral." Zix hesitated. "They suggested it was likely equipment malfunction. The High Chancellor ordered a diagnostic of our long-range sensors and indicated that no further action was necessary." Vextal's crest flattened against her skull, a sign of disapproval her species couldn't suppress. Politics. Always politics when it came to Earth. Too many Council members had blood on their hands from that conflict. Too many secrets they preferred to keep buried along with the human race. "Run the diagnostic as ordered," she commanded, "but maintain surveillance on these coordinates. If the signal changes in any way, I want to know immediately." "Yes, Admiral." She turned to leave but paused at the doorway. "And Lieutenant, keep this between us for now." 3 days later, Vextal was awakened from her hibernation cycle by an urgent alert. She reached the command center within minutes, finding it in a state of controlled chaos. "Report," she demanded. Commander Eltrin, her second-in-command, looked up from the central display. The Volrethi's normally calm demeanor was visibly shaken, his luminescent skin pulsing with stress patterns. "The signal has changed, Admiral. It's everywhere." "Explain." "It began 2 hours ago. The Earth signal suddenly disappeared, but moments later, we detected anomalies in our communication network. Small glitches at first, data packets arriving out of sequence, minor corruption in transmission codes. But it's spreading through the Council's entire communication infrastructure." Vextal moved to the strategic display, which showed the vast network of communication relays spanning Council space. Dozens of nodes were blinking red, indicating disruption. "Pattern. That's what concerns us most, Admiral," said Eltrin, manipulating the display to highlight the affected areas. "The disruptions are following the exact network paths that would have been used if Earth were still an active node in the system. It's as if they're tracing the old communication lines outward." Vextal felt a chill run through her body. The implications were disturbing. Any communication from the Council. "That's just it, Admiral. We can't reach them. The primary quantum channels to Central are among the affected systems." The Admiral stared at the display, watching as more nodes turned red. An old human phrase she had learned during her studies of the war came to mind. The dead don't send messages. Prepare my ship, she ordered. Alert Captain Nixforan to assemble a reconnaissance team. Full biohazard protocols. Eltrin's skin pulsed with alarm. Admiral, with respect, the quarantine directives are absolute. No vessel is permitted within. I'm well aware of the directives, Commander, Vextal interrupted, her voice cutting like steel. But if there is even the slightest possibility that something has survived on Earth, the Council needs to know. And if I cannot communicate with the Council, then you must investigate yourself. Eltrin finished. Exactly. We depart in 3 hours. As Vextal left to prepare, the main display flickered, the red warning indicators spreading like a virus across the network map. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, the pattern of affected nodes resembled a human face, smiling. Then it was gone, leaving only the chaotic spread of destruction in its wake. The council chamber erupted in chaos when High Chancellor Oram finally shared the report from Monitoring Station Epsilon 9. This is preposterous, thundered Delegate Kresh, his massive fists pounding the table. Earth is dead. We made certain of it. Admiral Vextal's data is concerning, countered Councillor Leary, her delicate fingers manipulating a holographic model of the communication disruptions. These patterns cannot be coincidental. Oram raised a hand, silencing the chamber. The ancient Tellurian's gray skin seemed paler than usual, his 3 eyes filled with concern. Whether this is a genuine signal from Earth or some elaborate deception, we cannot ignore it. The network disruptions alone demand investigation. Then send drones, suggested Kresh. No living being should break quarantine. Drones would be detected and potentially compromised, said Leary. Admiral Vextal's decision to personally investigate may be our best option. The High Chancellor nodded slowly. I agree. Admiral Vextal has more experience with human matters than anyone else in the fleet. If anyone can determine what's happening, it's her. A soft chime interrupted the discussion. The central communication system had activated itself, projecting a message no one had sent. The chamber fell silent as words appeared in the air before them, written in ancient human English, a language few now understood but all recognized. We nev or sto ppdwa teaching. The message lingered for 3 seconds, then vanished. In its place appeared a countdown timer. 72 o'clock. 00, ticking down second by second. What is the meaning of this? Demanded Kresh, his voice no longer thunderous but hushed with apprehension. Oram didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the timer, his ancient mind calculating possibilities, none of them comforting. It appears, he finally said, we have 3 days to find out. Aboard her ship, the vigilant observer, Admiral Vextal, reviewed the final preparations for their approach to Earth. The planet loomed on their view screens, a blue-green orb partially obscured by swirling clouds, far more vibrant than the dead, gray world it should have been after the purge. Final atmospheric analysis, she requested. Science Officer Mira, one of the few Centauri still serving in the fleet, consulted her instruments. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, Admiral. Traces of carbon dioxide and argon. It's breathable. That's impossible, muttered Security Chief Dorn. The purge should have left nothing but toxic compounds for at least a millennium. And yet, said Vextal, gesturing toward the view screen, the ship's sensors continued their scan, revealing more impossibilities. Vegetation signatures covered significant portions of the landmasses. Ocean temperatures indicated normal seasonal variations, and most disturbing of all, there were energy readings, faint but unmistakable, emanating from locations that once held human cities. Could they have survived? Asked Mira, voicing the question they were all considering. Vextal had studied human history extensively, more than was required by her position. She had developed a grudging respect for their tenacity, their refusal to surrender even when defeat was inevitable. But survival after the purge, That seemed beyond even human capability. "We'll find out soon enough," she replied. "Prepare the landing craft. I want a small team only. Myself, Chief Dorn, Officer Mira, and 2 security specialists. Full containment suits and weapons. We'll touch down 5 kilometers from the strongest energy signature and proceed on foot." As her officers moved to comply, Vextal remained at the viewscreen, studying the planet below. Something caught her attention, a pattern in the cloud formations over what had once been the human territory called North America. For a moment, they seemed to form shapes that couldn't possibly be natural, almost like words written across the sky. She blinked, and the pattern dispersed into ordinary clouds. A trick of light, surely, or perhaps a warning that whatever awaited them on Earth was far beyond their expectations. The countdown that had appeared in the council chamber was now showing on every screen across the galaxy, ticking relentlessly toward 0. Whatever message Earth had to deliver, the time for revealing it was approaching fast. The investigation. The landing craft touched down in a clearing surrounded by tall trees with broad leaves that filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. Admiral Vextal was the first to step onto Earth's soil, her containment suit's sensors immediately analyzing everything around her. "Radiation levels nominal," reported Science Officer Mira, consulting her handheld scanner. "Air composition consistent with orbital readings. No detected pathogens or toxins." Chief Dorn surveyed the perimeter, his weapon ready. "This doesn't make sense. I've seen the purge footage. Nothing should have survived, let alone thrived." He gestured at their surroundings. The forest was alive with sounds, insects buzzing, birds calling, small creatures rustling through undergrowth. It was not the dead world they had expected. "Perhaps the purge was not as thorough as we believed," suggested Vextal. "Or perhaps something else happened here." They moved through the forest toward the energy signature, each step revealing more evidence that Earth had recovered impossibly quickly. After an hour's walk, they reached the edge of the tree line and stopped in collective shock. Before them stretched ruins, but not the blasted remnants the purge should have left. These were the ruins of a city that had continued to exist long after the supposed extinction of humanity. Buildings weathered by time rather than devastation, nature reclaiming structures gradually rather than suddenly. "These buildings," said Mira, examining a crumbling wall covered in vines, "they show signs of having been maintained for at least 3 centuries after the purge." Vextal approached what appeared to be a central structure, larger than the others and better preserved. Its architecture was unmistakably human in origin, but with modifications that suggested adaptation over time. "The energy signature is coming from underground," reported Dorn, studying his scanner. "Directly beneath this building." They found the entrance partially concealed by overgrowth, a heavy metal door set into the ground, its surface engraved with symbols that Vextal recognized as human writing, but couldn't decipher. "Can we open it?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, the door slid open silently, revealing a dimly lit passage leading downward. "It appears," said Mira dryly, "that we're expected." Vextal drew her weapon. "Stay alert. If anything moves, report it immediately, but do not fire unless I give the order." They descended into the earth, the passage illuminating itself as they progressed. The walls were smooth metal, unmarked and seemingly new despite their age. After nearly 100 meters of gradual descent, the passage opened into a vast chamber that defied all expectations. It was a command center, clearly of human design, but far more advanced than anything that should have existed 5 centuries ago. Screens lined the walls, displaying what appeared to be real-time data from thousands of locations, not just on Earth, but throughout the galaxy. Most shocking of all, the systems were active, lights blinking, data flowing, power humming through conduits. "Admiral," whispered Mira, her voice tight with disbelief, "these are monitoring feeds from Council worlds. Helios Prime, Deneb Colony, even Central itself. They've been watching us." Vextal approached a central console, its surface responding to her presence by illuminating additional displays. One screen showed her own ship in orbit. Another displayed the Galactic Council chamber where, at that very moment, emergency sessions were being held to address the mysterious countdown. "How is this possible?" asked Dorn. "Even if some humans survived the purge, they couldn't have built this technology. They were centuries behind us." "Were they?" Vextal mused, examining the sophistication of the systems around them. "Or did we simply assume they were?" A soft hum filled the chamber, and a section of the floor at its center began to rise. The security specialists raised their weapons, but Vextal motioned for them to hold fire. From the floor emerged what appeared to be a stasis pod, its transparent surface revealing a human figure inside. As they watched, the pod opened, and the figure sat up. It was a man, appearing middle-aged by human standards, with dark skin and eyes that reflected the intelligence Vextal had read about in historical accounts of the species. "Admiral Thora Vextal," the man said, his voice clear and steady. "We've been expecting you. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen, and I represent what remains of humanity." Dr. Chen led them through a series of chambers, each more astonishing than the last. Vast hydroponics gardens grew food without sunlight. Manufacturing facilities operated autonomously, producing technologies that even Vextal didn't recognize. Most disturbing were the hibernation chambers, thousands of them, each containing a human in suspended animation. After the council voted for the purge, Chen explained as they walked, "We knew we couldn't win through conventional warfare. Your combined fleets were too powerful, your weapons too advanced. So we made a choice, to disappear." "But the atmospheric toxins," objected Mira. "The radiation. Nothing could have survived on the surface." Chen smiled sadly. "That's what we wanted you to believe. The weapons you deployed were devastating, yes, but we had prepared. While your ships bombarded our major cities, millions of us were already underground in shelters designed to withstand far worse than what you threw at us." They entered a new chamber, one that caused even the stoic Dorn to inhale sharply. It contained row upon row of what appeared to be humans, but not entirely. Their bodies were partially mechanical, implants and interfaces merging flesh with technology in ways that went far beyond prosthetics. "What are these?" asked Vextal, unable to hide her unease. "The next step," said Chen simply. "When we realized we would be confined to underground existence for generations, we began adapting, enhancing ourselves to survive in our new reality." He approached one of the figures, a woman whose body appeared to seamlessly integrate with what looked like a communications array. "Maya here is one of our network integrators. Her consciousness can directly interface with any system, biological or technological. She's how we've maintained our surveillance of Council space." "You've been spying on us," accused Dorn, "for 5 centuries. "We prefer to call it maintaining awareness," Chen replied. "After all, you did try to exterminate us. Prudence suggested we keep an eye on those who wished us dead." Vextal's mind was racing, calculating implications. "The communication disruptions. You're responsible." Chen nodded. "A demonstration of capability. Nothing more. We could have done far worse." "And the countdown?" she asked. "Ah," Chen smiled. "That brings us to why you're here. The countdown marks the end of our isolation and the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship with the galactic community." He gestured for them to follow him to yet another chamber. This one contained a single massive device, pulsing with energy that Vextal's suit sensors couldn't even classify. "This is the Nexus," Chen explained. "For 5 centuries, we've been building it, perfecting it, waiting for the right moment. When the countdown reaches 0, it activates." "To do what?" demanded Vextal, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. Chen's expression became serious. "Not what you fear, Admiral. We had plenty of time to plan revenge if that's what we wanted. The Nexus has a different purpose entirely." He touched a control panel, and a holographic display appeared above the device, showing a complex network of connections spanning the galaxy. What you're seeing is a map of every communication system, every data network, every technological infrastructure in Council space, and beyond. For centuries, we've been quietly integrating ourselves into these systems, becoming essential to their function without anyone realizing it. Why? Asked Vextal, a growing sense of dread filling her. Because, said Chen, we needed to ensure that when we finally revealed ourselves, annihilation wouldn't be an option. The galaxy has become dependent on systems they don't even realize we help maintain. Mira stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. You've been helping, not sabotaging. Precisely, Chen nodded. The Purge taught us that direct confrontation was futile. So we chose a different path, making ourselves indispensable rather than threatening. When the Nexus fully activates, our role will become clear to everyone. Vextal studied Chen carefully, weighing his words against what she knew of human history. And if the Council rejects your emergence, if they choose aggression again, Chen's smile held no malice, only certainty. They won't. The countdown isn't just a dramatic reveal, Admiral. It's giving your leaders time to discover exactly how integrated we've become in galactic infrastructure. They're already finding out that key systems they depend on have human fingerprints all over them. As if on cue, Vextal's communication device signaled an incoming transmission from the Council. The message was brief but confirmed Chen's claim. Analysis of the network disruptions had revealed complex subroutines in critical systems across Council space, all bearing distinctive human programming signatures. They had been there for centuries, quietly improving efficiency, preventing failures, guiding development. Humanity hadn't been planning revenge. They had been silently helping the very civilization that tried to destroy them. Why? Asked Vextal, genuinely confused. After what was done to your world, to your people, why help rather than harm? Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Because we learned something important during our isolation, Admiral. Revenge is satisfying, but ultimately empty. Creation has always been humanity's greatest strength, not destruction. We chose to create a future where cooperation was inevitable rather than impossible. As they returned to the surface, Vextal couldn't shake the feeling that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just the survival of a species thought extinct, but a fundamental challenge to how civilizations interacted. Humanity had transformed defeat into perhaps the most subtle victory imaginable. The countdown continued its relentless progress toward zero, and with each passing hour, more revelations emerged about humanity's hidden influence throughout the galaxy. The question now wasn't whether humanity would rejoin galactic society, but how the Council would respond to a species that had proven themselves both impossibly resilient and disturbingly far-seeing. The revelation. The High Council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from every major world in the Alliance gathered in emergency session. The central holographic display showed the countdown, now less than 1 hour from completion. Below it floated another image, a live feed from Admiral Vextal's ship, showing Dr. Marcus Chen addressing the assembled leaders of the galaxy. For 5 centuries, Chen was saying, his voice calm despite the gravity of the moment. Humanity has existed in the shadows of your civilization. We've watched you expand across the stars, colonize new worlds, face challenges both internal and external. And where we could, without revealing ourselves, we helped. High Chancellor Oram leaned forward in his seat, his ancient eyes narrowed. You claim benevolence, yet you infiltrated our systems without consent. Some might call that an act of war. Chen smiled faintly. We call it survival, Chancellor. When faced with extinction, we adapted. Would any of your species have done differently? The chamber fell silent, the question hanging in the air. It was Councillor Leary who finally spoke, her analytical mind having processed the implications more quickly than most. The weather control systems on Proxima I, she said. The navigational protocols that prevented the collision of colony ships in the Vega corridor, the quantum algorithms that doubled food production during the Rigel famine. She looked up at Chen's image. All of these advances were attributed to our scientists, but they were your work, weren't they? Partially, Chen acknowledged. We provided suggestions, corrections to flawed equations, alternative approaches when your scientists reached dead ends. We never replaced your innovation. We merely enhanced it when lives were at stake. Admiral Vextall, standing beside Chen in the transmission, addressed her superiors directly. I've seen their installation on Earth, Council members. I've verified their claims. Humanity could have used their technology to destroy us at any point in the last 5 centuries. Instead, they chose to help from the shadows. And now, demanded Delegate Kresh, his massive form tense with suspicion. What happens when your countdown reaches 0? Chen gestured, and a holographic display changed to show a complex technological schematic. This is the Nexus, the culmination of our work since the Purge. When activated, it will integrate all human technology explicitly into your systems, no longer hidden but working openly alongside your own. It represents our formal request to rejoin galactic society, not as conquerors or refugees, but as partners. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, some outraged, others intrigued, many simply bewildered. Oram raised a hand for silence. You must understand our position, Dr. Chen. Your species was considered extinct. Your sudden reappearance, with technology that apparently surpasses our own, presents significant security concerns. We anticipated those concerns, replied Chen, which is why the Nexus activation requires your consent. If the Council votes against our proposal, we will withdraw our systems gradually, ensuring no disruption to critical services. We seek integration, not coercion. Leary's delicate features showed intense concentration. The technological benefits would be substantial, Chancellor. Based on what we've already discovered about human contributions to our systems, formal collaboration could advance our development by centuries. At what cost? Countered Kresh. What do they want in return? Chen's expression remained serene. Recognition. Restoration of Earth's status as a sovereign world. Security guarantees against future attempts at genocide. And knowledge exchange. We have much to learn from you as well. The countdown now showed less than 30 minutes. Oram called for a brief recess to allow council members to confer with their respective governments. The chamber emptied, leaving only the High Chancellor, Admiral Vextall, and a holographic image of Dr. Chen. Off the record, Doctor, said Oram, once they were alone. I must know. How did your people forgive us for the Purge? How did you resist the urge for vengeance? Chen's holographic eyes seemed to look through Oram, seeing the weight of centuries of leadership in the ancient alien's posture. We didn't, at first, he admitted. The first generation after the Purge planned 1,000 ways to make the galaxy pay. But isolation forces perspective. As decades became centuries, we realized that clinging to hatred would only complete what the Purge began, the destruction of what made us human. And what is that? Asked Vextall, genuinely curious. Hope, said Chen simply. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that problems have solutions, that connections are more valuable than divisions. It's why we eventually chose to help rather than harm, because that choice affirmed our humanity rather than diminishing it. When the council reconvened, the mood had shifted. The initial shock had given way to cautious consideration, the reflexive fear to measured analysis. The decision, when it came, was not unanimous. Decisions of this magnitude rarely were, but it was decisive. The Galactic Council, announced Oram, his voice solemn with the weight of history, accepts humanity's proposal for integration. Earth is hereby recognized as a sovereign world within Council space, with all rights and protections thereof. As the countdown reached 0, something remarkable happened. Throughout Council space, systems that had been operating at optimal levels suddenly performed even better. Communications became clearer, predictive algorithms more accurate, energy distribution more efficient. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the full potential of technologies that had been deliberately operating below their capabilities. On view screens across the galaxy, a symbol appeared. A simple circle with a spiral within it, humanity's new emblem. Beneath it were words in every known language. We return to the stars not as conquerors, but as companions. The past is prologue, the future unbounded. 3 months later, Admiral Vextall stood on a hillside overlooking what had once been Washington, D.C., now a curious blend of ancient ruins and new construction. Beside her, Dr. Chen pointed out features of the emerging city, structures that honored human history while incorporating technology beyond anything the Admiral had seen before. "Your people are returning to the surface," she observed. Chen nodded. "Slowly. 5 centuries underground changes a species. Some will remain below, more comfortable in the world we built there. Others are eager to feel real sunlight again. And your enhanced humans, the ones merged with technology. They'll find their place," said Chen. "As will we all in this new arrangement." Vextall had been appointed as the Council's official liaison to Earth, a position she had accepted with a sense of historical symmetry. Her ancestor had commanded ships during the original conflict with humanity. Now she would help forge peace. "There's still resistance," she noted. "Many Council worlds remain suspicious." "Of course," Chen agreed. "Trust takes time. We've had 5 centuries to come to terms with our place in the galaxy. Others will need more than a few months." In the distance, a ship descended through the clouds, the first official diplomatic delegation from the Council to Earth. It marked the beginning of a new chapter not just for humanity, but for all spacefaring civilizations. "They expected extinction to be our end," said Chen, watching the ship approach. "Instead, it became our beginning." Vextall considered the human beside her, representing a species that had transformed potential annihilation into perhaps the most remarkable survival story in galactic history. Not through weapons or warfare, but through patience, ingenuity, and a willingness to help even those who had tried to destroy them. "Perhaps," she suggested, "that is the most human thing about you." Chen smiled, his eyes reflecting the light of a sun he had been born beneath, but was only now truly experiencing. "Perhaps it is." As the delegation ship landed, releasing representatives from a dozen worlds onto Earth's soil, the spiral symbol of humanity pulsed on communication devices across the planet. A reminder that from the brink of extinction, they had not only survived but transcended. They had never stopped watching. And now, the galaxy would never stop seeing them. The end.